In 1984, every man this woman dates vanished. She had changed her name, job, and city each time. But one single habit always gave her away. She handcuffs, mouth gag and lock them up in a dungeon to rot. The summer heat bore down heavy on the city, thick with the smell of gasoline and smog. Sylvia Harrow, though that wasn't her real name, stepped off the Greyhound bus wearing oversized sunglasses, her dark hair pinned back in a tidy bun. She carried a small duffel bag and an air of practiced anonymity. She was used to starting over. Denver was her fourth city in 5 years. Her ID now read Sylvia, but to the men who had once known her as Janine, Carla, or Lila, she was someone else entirely, someone who never said goodbye. She checked into a modest apartment on 9th and Logan under the name Sylvia Hunt. By day, she found a job as a receptionist at a small orthopedic clinic. Quiet, efficient, and always polite, she kept her head down and made no waves. But by night, she watched. She wandered the city's lounges and late-night diners, scanning for the same kind of man, handsome, alone, and curious. That's how she met Detective Mark Allison. He wasn't what she'd expected. He wasn't the kind of man who drank away his regrets or flirted with every woman in the bar. No, Mark was more guarded. But she could tell something haunted him, something hidden behind the way he watched the exits more than he watched her. She leaned in close to him at the bar. "You don't seem like you're here for the music." He smiled. "Barely. And you don't seem like you're here for a drink." Their conversation flowed easily. Within 2 weeks, he was spending nights at her apartment. By the third week, she'd memorized the way his breath changed when he was asleep. On the fourth, she found the handgun hidden in his coat pocket. Standard issue. One night, she lit a cigarette on the fire escape while he slept. Below, the city moved like a giant machine, people rushing home from late shifts, taxis flashing their lights. Sylvia didn't feel nervous. She never did. But there was something different about Mark. Something she couldn't quite control. That made him dangerous. She had a system, one honed by years of trial and error. After growing up in an abusive household in Kentucky, she had learned early that trusting the wrong man could be fatal. So she flipped the script. She created her own set of rules. No long-term plans. No real names. And most importantly, no evidence. Except one thing. She always gagged them the same way, handcuffs, mouth gag, and a padlocked cell in a hidden basement. Some habits never died, even when the names did. Her latest dungeon was beneath an abandoned mechanic's garage outside the city. She paid cash monthly to a man who didn't ask questions. The basement was crude, damp walls, a rusted drain in the center, and a thick steel door she'd installed herself. She only needed it for a few days at a time. She moved fast. On the 39th night of knowing Mark, she suggested a weekend getaway. Just the two of them. "I know a quiet spot outside the city. No traffic. We could disappear for a bit," she said, running a finger down his chest. He smiled. "Sounds perfect." The trap was set. But Mark had suspicions. A few names had crossed his desk in recent months. Men who'd vanished under bizarrely similar circumstances. All with connections to different cities, different women, and always an anonymous tip that went nowhere. He couldn't explain why, but Sylvia's calm demeanor and blank past had triggered something deep in his gut. So he ran her name. It came back empty. No birth certificate, no medical records, no schooling history before 1981. Just a driver's license issued in Illinois under the name Sylvia Hunt. Mark decided to keep playing along. They drove out to the garage late Friday night. She said it was a family cabin, but the closer they got, the more isolated the road became. No houses. No lights. Just the roar of the engine and a quiet radio hum. When they arrived, she led him through the building and into the basement, flicking on a single bulb that cast hard shadows on the concrete floor. The moment he stepped through the steel doorway, he reached for his gun. But she was faster. A sharp jolt cracked against the back of his head, a crowbar. He staggered, gun dropping, and she struck again. Blood smeared across his collar as he collapsed. She stared at him, breathing heavy. Her hands trembled. She hadn't planned on using violence so early. But this wasn't a normal man. He'd been watching her as much as she'd been watching him. She dragged his unconscious body inside and shackled his wrists to the pipe. His head lolled. She inserted the gag and locked the door behind her. The air was damp, filled with the scent of rust and mildew. It calmed her. Back at the apartment, she burned everything with his name on it. Business cards, receipts, notes. The ashes flushed easily down the toilet. The next day, she returned to the clinic as if nothing had happened. She smiled at patients, answered phones. Her voice didn't shake once. But Mark wasn't done. By Sunday, he had regained consciousness. He struggled weakly against the cuffs. His mouth was dry, but his mind was clear. Through the haze of pain, he remembered how she'd smiled when they'd first met. By Monday night, he was planning his escape. Sylvia returned that evening to find the pipe still intact. Mark slumped over. But his breathing pattern had changed. She tilted her head, watching him. Was he pretending? She crouched close, ready to adjust the gag. But the second her hand brushed his jaw, he struck, hard. His forehead smashed into hers, dazing her just long enough for him to twist the cuff chain and dislocate his thumb, slipping free. He lunged, and they crashed into the concrete floor. Her elbow caught his rib. He roared, and she rolled away, reaching for her bag, the same one she always brought down, the same one with the gun inside. He got there first. The standoff was messy. Blood trickled from her mouth. He aimed, breathing hard. "I should kill you." She smiled, teeth bloodstained. "You won't. You're still a cop." They stared at each other, motionless, the room crackling with tension. Then the sound of tires screeched upstairs. Someone else had arrived. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share and subscribe for more. The year was 1999, San Diego, California. 15 years later, the heat was different. It wasn't the dry, cutting sun of Colorado. San Diego's warmth felt lazy and slow, like the whole city was permanently relaxed. That suited her just fine. This time, she was Margot Lane. She sold boat insurance at a marina where no one cared who you used to be, as long as you didn't miss your lunch break or mess up the paperwork. Her shoulder-length hair was now honey blonde, cut straight with bangs. She wore oversized sunglasses again, not to be mysterious, but to hide the slight curve of a scar on her forehead, right where Mark Allison's head had slammed into hers back in '84. He had escaped. But he never went to the police. Why? She didn't know. And that made her paranoid for years. She moved from city to city every 2 years, changing names and trimming her routine to perfection. No phones in her real name. No photos. She was a shadow with a smile. Every time someone got close, she vanished. But Margot was tired of running. So she picked San Diego and stayed longer than usual. That's when she met Daniel Ruiz, a boat mechanic who worked 3 slips down from her office. He had grease under his nails, a crooked nose from a bar fight, and a quick wit that made her laugh before she realized she was letting her guard down. They started seeing each other after hours. Beer and tacos at a beach shack. Midnight walks on the sand. She told him her parents were dead, that she didn't believe in marriage, and that she hated the color yellow. All lies, but comforting ones. Daniel didn't push. One night, he fixed a busted alternator for a yacht worth more than most homes in the city. She brought him a sandwich and leaned on the hull, watching his hands move with calm confidence. "You ever killed a man?" she asked, half joking. He wiped sweat from his forehead and grinned. "Not lately." "Why? You looking for someone to disappear?" She smiled, but something stirred in her chest. There was always a line, even with good men. She liked Daniel too much. And that meant he had to go. But not in the usual way. The garage and dungeon trick was long retired. After Mark, she changed methods. Now it was an old converted wine cellar under a warehouse she bought under a fake business name. Cold and quiet, lined with old wooden racks and a solid iron door at the back. She still used the same cuffs. Same gag. Same lock. Her routine was tight. But Daniel noticed things. "You never let me take pictures of you," he said once. "I don't like how I look in photos. You don't talk about high school. I dropped out. You never laugh at the same joke twice." She paused. "You keeping score?" He kissed her instead. That night, he stayed over, and when he was asleep, she sat in the corner of the room just watching him breathe. The next day, she told her boss she needed a week off. "Family thing," she lied. Then she took Daniel on a trip. The warehouse was located on the outskirts of Chula Vista. Looked like nothing from the outside, just another abandoned shipping facility. But inside, past the broken pallets and dust, was a locked metal hatch that led down a narrow stairwell. She told Daniel she found it while house shopping for fun. Said it'd be cool to explore. He followed her down, flashlight in hand, curious but unbothered. When he saw the cellar, he raised a brow. "What is this, some bootlegger's hideout?" She moved fast. One solid hit to the back of the head, same crowbar, same swing. He dropped like a sack of bricks. She didn't wait to check his pulse. She went straight to the cuffs and secured his wrists to the heavy pipe bolted to the cellar wall. She slid in the gag and locked the iron door. The usual peace washed over her. But hours later, when she returned to check on him, something was wrong. He wasn't there. The cuffs hung empty. The lock hadn't been picked. The door hadn't been busted. She stepped forward slowly, eyes scanning every shadow. Her breath quickened. And then she saw it, the small black device he'd hidden in the heel of his boot. A GPS tracker. Her stomach dropped. He'd known. He had never trusted her fully. He had tracked her the moment things started feeling too perfect. And now, someone else knew where she was. She bolted for the exit, locking the cellar door behind her. By the time she reached her car, 2 black SUVs pulled up across the lot. She sprinted behind a dumpster as doors opened and men in plain clothes jumped out, guns drawn, voices barking orders. Federal agents. She crouched low, heart pounding, waiting for the exact right moment. One of them stepped too close. She kicked his knee out from under him and grabbed his gun as he fell. Gunfire erupted. She didn't aim to kill, just to escape. Bullets slammed into the warehouse walls, sparks flying from metal. She ducked behind a pillar, fired twice toward a light fixture, and bolted as darkness dropped like a curtain. Daniel was working with them. He had played her too. But she was always faster. She sprinted through a broken window and dropped into a drainage ditch. Caked in mud, she moved through the tunnels for miles until she reached a gas station. 30 minutes later, her hair was cut, her clothes were burned, and she had taken the ID of a waitress who had passed out drunk in the back of her boyfriend's truck. By sunrise, Margot Lane was gone. The FBI tore through the warehouse. They found the wine cellar, the cuffs, the lock. But they didn't find her. She'd already hopped a freight train headed north. A week later, the story hit the news. Woman suspected in multiple disappearances evades federal capture. Daniel was interviewed on national television, giving a rehearsed smile and carefully vague answers. He left out the part where he had fallen for her. He left out how she'd kissed him before knocking him out. And he never mentioned how, even now, he wasn't sure if she had meant to kill him. He did, however, keep the scar above his eyebrow where the metal pipe had struck him during his escape. She had vanished again. But someone else was already starting to look for her. Someone who hadn't forgotten what happened in 1984. The year was 2013, Kansas City, Missouri. She went by Claire Benson now. Different name, different city. She wore glasses she didn't need and worked as a corporate trainer for a regional tech firm. Most of her job was flying from office to office teaching new hires how to not screw up payroll systems. No one ever questioned her. She picked the Midwest because it was quiet. Too flat, too polite, too safe for anyone to expect a woman like her to be here. It had been nearly 14 years since the warehouse shootout in San Diego. A long time. She was careful to never stay longer than 3 years in one place again. No more love. No more mistakes. But that all changed when she met Jack Whitman. Jack was a contract security consultant for the same company. He wore beat-up boots, had a small scar on his lip, and kept to himself. They met at a corporate event in Tulsa when both of them showed up to the bar after the speeches, avoiding the awkward networking games. He noticed her first. "You look like the only person here who hates small talk more than I do," he said, sliding onto the stool beside her. She smirked. "You'd be surprised how deep I can fake it." They drank. They talked. He was smart, blunt, and had just enough of a dark past to make her curious. Military, maybe. Definitely trained. She asked him where he learned to shoot. "Iraq," he said. "Then Somalia. Then I got tired of seeing everything I touched fall apart." She didn't push further. Over the next 6 months, they ended up on more projects together. Travel gave them excuses to be around each other. Same flights. Same hotels. Same long nights fixing presentations while everyone else slept. It wasn't love. It was survival. He understood silence. That's what drew her in. Still, when she started to feel something, her instincts returned like a cold hand on her neck. Every man she let in got too close. And she couldn't afford close again. Not after Daniel. Not after what the FBI had nearly pulled off. So she did what she always did. She watched. She waited. She planned. There was an old underground storage unit on the outskirts of the city. Used to be a meat locker in the 60s. She bought it under a fake holding company and turned one of the back rooms into a cell. Clean. Quiet. It still smelled faintly of blood and iron. When Jack brought up taking a weekend trip together, just somewhere quiet, she agreed. They drove south, past small towns and cornfields until they reached the spot. He had no reason to suspect her. She'd been perfect. Normal. The kind of woman a man could marry. She led him inside, told him she had something to show him. As soon as he stepped into the cell, she pulled the switch. The steel door slammed shut. A flashbang detonated behind him, and by the time he hit the ground, she was already inside, zip-tying his wrists and slipping the mouth gag in place. He tried to fight, but he was dazed. Fast, but not fast enough. She stood over him for a moment, breathing hard. "I'm sorry, Jack," she whispered. But before she could leave, her phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. "You always leave them gagged. That's how I know it's you." Her chest tightened. Her hands trembled slightly as she read it again. She didn't answer. Instead, she ran. She jumped in her car and left Jack locked inside the cell. No cleanup. No plan. She drove for 4 hours straight before finally stopping at a roadside motel in Oklahoma. Inside, she tried to breathe. Tried to think. She hadn't slipped. She'd used a burner phone. The unit was registered to a shell company. No cameras. No paper trail. So how the hell did someone find her? The next morning, another text came. "You're losing your touch. I've been following you since Phoenix. You left a name trail. You left the same scent." Scent. She stared at the message, then suddenly stood up and checked her bags. Perfume. The one constant she'd never abandoned. Wild iris. She'd been wearing it since 1984. She loved the way it settled against her skin. Subtle. Sharp. And apparently, it had betrayed her. She smashed the bottle in the motel sink. That night, she tried to sleep but couldn't. At 2:13 a.m., a bullet shattered her motel window. She dove to the floor as another round zipped through the wall, tearing through the cheap painting above the bed. She grabbed the Glock she kept taped under the nightstand and rolled to the side just as the door burst open. A man in all black rushed in, gun raised. She fired twice, sent a mass. He dropped instantly. But there was another. She heard the footsteps outside, boots crunching gravel. She jumped through the broken window barefoot, ignoring the glass tearing at her feet, and ran into the field behind the motel. Shots rang out. Dirt kicked up at her heels. She zigzagged, found cover behind a rusted-out pickup, and waited. Whoever they were, they wanted her alive. The shots weren't kill shots. Amateurs. Or someone who still wanted answers. She crept through the brush for half a mile until she reached a road, flagged down a semi, and disappeared again. By the time police arrived at the motel, the man she shot had vanished. No ID. No fingerprints. The security footage? Gone. Wiped clean. Someone was tracking her. Watching her patterns. Waiting. Back in Kansas City, Jack woke up in the cell. Dizzy. Blood dried at the corner of his mouth. His wrists ached, but he was alive. He didn't know where he was, or how long he'd been out. He called out. No answer. But unlike the others, Jack didn't panic. He started studying the walls, counting minutes, breathing slow. He'd learned patience in the desert. And he knew one thing: whoever did this to him had done it before. The year was 2025. Memphis, Tennessee. She now went by Eliza Hart. She lived in a quiet duplex near the Mississippi River and worked the night shift at a nursing home. Her hair was now jet black, cut short, and her voice was softer than before. Most people called her sweet. Some called her lonely. No one called her dangerous, which was exactly how she liked it. She didn't date anymore. She didn't talk to neighbors. She didn't use perfume. She still checked the locks every night. Still kept 2 unregistered handguns, one under her mattress, one taped behind the refrigerator. She had learned. Every mistake she'd ever made had taught her something. But even with all that, something had shifted. For the first time in decades, she felt like someone was still coming for her. She could feel it in the way her stomach tightened when the mail came late, or when her car alarm chirped without reason. The silence used to be her comfort. Now, it felt like bait. She avoided cameras, paid in cash, changed routes to work. But there was one loose end, one thing that made her wake up at night sweating. Jack. She had meant to go back, to finish it. But she'd panicked. The texts had come too fast. The bullets too close. She didn't have time. And she never looked back. But now, it was clear she should have. One rainy evening, while walking out of her shift at the nursing home, she noticed something off. A car parked across the street. Same one from the week before. It hadn't moved. No plates. The windows were fogged, but she was sure someone was inside. She walked past it slowly, pretending to fumble for her umbrella. Her eyes scanned the rearview mirror. Movement. Someone sat up. She bolted across the street and cut between buildings, heart racing, shoes slapping puddles. She didn't stop until she reached her car 2 blocks down. By the time she slammed the door shut and peeled out, her hands were shaking. Back at her house, she did what she always did in crisis mode. She went underground. Literally. Beneath her garage was a new bunker she had built 2 years earlier. Reinforced walls. Silent ventilation. Enough canned food and water for 3 months. She'd even wired a motion sensor to alert her if anyone walked upstairs. She settled in. Waited. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th day, just after midnight, the sensor pinged. 3 short beeps. Someone was in the house. She grabbed the gun from the shelf and killed the lights. The monitors flicked on, showing grainy footage from the upstairs hallway. A man. Alone. Calm. He moved like he'd done this before. Not fast. Not loud. He walked into her kitchen. Looked around. Then turned to face the nearest camera. It was Jack. His face was bruised, older, his beard full now, but unmistakable. He stared directly into the lens for a full 10 seconds, then sat at her kitchen table. He wasn't searching. He was waiting. She stood in the dark, the weight of the gun cold in her hand. Her breathing slowed. Her thoughts scrambled. She had left him locked up 12 years ago. He must have escaped. Or been found. Either way, he knew who she was. Now he was in her house. She moved through the escape tunnel in the bunker. It led to the storm drain under the next street. As she reached the end, she paused, thinking. She could run again. Change her name. Her hair. Move to Idaho. Alaska. Anywhere. But for the first time, something in her said no. She wasn't going to run. Not this time. She doubled back through the alley, circling around to the front of the house. Rain fell hard, soaking her shirt as she crouched by the back porch. She listened. Silence. Then, footsteps above. She slipped through the side door and crept down the hallway. The gun was raised, steady. She stepped into the kitchen. He was gone. She turned, too slow. He tackled her from behind, slamming her into the fridge. The gun flew across the floor. She kicked back hard, caught him in the shin. He cursed but didn't let go. They fell. She elbowed him, scrambled for the drawer, but he pinned her arm and pressed something cold to her neck. A knife. "Stop," he said. His voice low. "Don't make me." They froze. She looked up at him. His eyes weren't filled with hate. Just pain. Long, deep pain. "You left me there," he said. "You left me to rot." She didn't answer. He kept the knife there for another few seconds, then slowly pulled back. She stood, heart pounding, blood dripping from her lip. He didn't move. "Why didn't you kill me?" he asked. "Because I didn't want to," she said quietly. "That never stopped you before. You weren't like the others." He let out a breath, laughing bitterly. "They say women like you don't exist. But I know better." She walked to the sink, turned on the tap, washed her face slowly. He watched. "I'm not going to prison," she said. He nodded. "I figured that." She turned and looked at him. "Are you going to kill me?" He thought about it. Really thought. "No." "Then what?" He slid a flash drive across the counter. "Everything you've done. Every man. Every city. You left a trail whether you knew it or not. Took me 10 years to piece it together. Another 2 to get the proof. And now what? You blackmail me." "No," he said. "I just wanted to look you in the eye before I burn this." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small torch lighter. Lit the edge of the drive. Flames danced. She stared in disbelief. "Why?" she asked. "Because I've lived with this long enough. I'm tired. I don't want revenge. I want peace." The drive burned out on the counter. Jack stepped back, walked toward the door. But then he stopped and turned to her once more. "There's one more thing," he said. "There's a cop in Arkansas. A woman. She's looking into you. You slipped up in 2006. Bad. You should leave." He walked out into the rain and didn't look back. Eliza, if that was still her name, stood frozen in her kitchen, eyes locked on the charred plastic. For the first time in 40 years. She didn't know what to do next. If you like this story, make sure to like, share and subscribe for a part 2 of this story. Also, in order to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.